Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSC Squared podcast. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the PBSC podcast. I'm Steve Moore, and this is Mark Castleman, and we are here for episode 288 with all of you. Titled, as you can see, My Porn and Sex-Addicted Partner Tells Me I Just Need to, quote-unquote, big quotes there, get over it. So now what? There's a lot behind that title. Let's talk about it. We got a pretty lengthy submission from a partner. And she wrote us, I'll just read this first little teeny part, and then I'll summarize a big portion, then we'll get to her question. I'm writing to you from a place of deep exhaustion and heartbreak, seeking your guidance on a complex situation. She goes on to introduce herself. She's been married to her husband for a little under a couple of decades. They do have one child, and she says, according to her, at this point in time, I have initiated divorce proceedings. But I'm struggling with whether there's any hope, given my husband's profound resistance to genuine change. Our relationship has been plagued by my husband's persistent dishonesty, emotional unavailability, financial irresponsibility, and a long history of pornography use and infidelity dating back to its beginning. And then she goes on to describe in pretty vivid detail a pretty extensive history of this. Again, going way back to the beginning of the relationship. The pattern has been a long-standing one, according to her, of her finding out things, him not being proactive in sharing them, recommitments to making different changes over time, and then failures to do so. At one point in time, this actually culminated in him having an affair with his ex-wife. He has had a long affinity with kind of the sexual side of things, all the way going back to he even actually worked in a strip club when they first met. And so has always kind of been in referenced from an over-sexualized culture to one degree or another. And since that time, there's been a whole host of acting out, both involving pornography, other people, fantasizing and like scanning other women is kind of a constant, according to her. And she does say at one point in time, it seems like she talks about how she actually considers herself to have a very high libido. She frequently is pursuing him from a physical standpoint. He will vocalize an interest in being physical with her, but then elects not to do so or never pursues her, but he is always in a consistent state of either acting out or engaging with fantasy with others, virtually and otherwise. And so she feels that he is in denial, about a deep denial about what she considers to be a very strong sexual addiction. And regardless of that, he, quote, is refusing accountability and blames me for all of this. He denies facts, even objective ones like failing a polygraph. She says he does do a few token things in recovery. Like, for example, he attends a 12-step meeting, but kind of denigrates it every time he attends. Outrightly admits it's just kind of checking the box. And so very, very rough kind of situation and long-standing one. Then she says, my question for you is...
Well, and she also says here that whenever she confronts him with any of this, he tells her she's too needy, she's childish, or she's overreacting.
Yes.
And that she just needs to get over it.
And then he also does say, and I appreciate Mark saying that, because she says he believes that he is too proud to fight for the marriage. And seems to just be continuing to test me how far he can push me until I give in. And then she says, yeah, my question for you is this. Is there any hope for reconciliation when my husband's words so starkly contradict his actions, especially when it comes to interest in me and in sex? He has lost all trust and refuses to rebuild anything, just expects me to, quote unquote, get over it and believe he's not going to do anything but hurt me more. And believe he's not going to do anything but to hurt me anymore. Despite hurting me every day, that he lacks every day. He lacks empathy and support and understanding of the trauma he's created. How do you advise someone in my position who is trying to heal from profound betrayal trauma when their partner is consistently unwilling to do any of the real work? Uh, he continues to have a fundamental disbelief in God or a higher power. This in turn hinders engagement in critical recovery principles for her and for them. He also genuinely seems to like himself as he is and doesn't really see any sort of need for making change. Um, and yeah, that's kind of more or less that's kind of where it leaves us. So we have a dynamic where she has initiated divorce. We've got this long-standing history, and he has made it very clear through both action and apparently words that, in many ways, he is saying, this is how it is, and it isn't going to change. So here you go.
Yeah.
So our question is, what do I do? Um,
Yeah.
I
And
guess, yeah,
as
go
we
ahead,
read
man.
that, our hearts go out to her. We hear this too often, where you too many times have a betrayed partner that is, yearning for intimate connection, wants to be considered, wants to be pursued, is looking for loyalty and fidelity. And he says he wants those same things, but his actions don't match his words.
Yeah.
And, it just seems like he's just settled. We call it settled into his addiction and behaviors, and says he likes himself just as he is. And she just needs to get over it. She's too demanding. She's too childish. She's not realistic. And so our hearts go out to this betrayed partner. This is really crushing, right? It's just crushing to
Yeah.
her relationship. Yeah.
Well, and as a guy who once upon a time regretfully told his wife during a conversation and in a moment of true inauthenticity, because it was anything but,
Mm,
um, this is how it is and it isn't going to change. And if you don't like it, there's the door.
mm,
Um, Probably my most regretful moment, or at least one of them to this day. There are a lot of things probably going on here because she does kind of allude to that. First of all, what is happening here? What is at play? And understanding that is at least being able to explore some of the potential causes is important because as this wife put it, and as many of our listeners are probably some of you partners may be in, you might be in a place where you've either initiated ending the relationship or are seriously considering doing so. And whenever we look to make a major change like that, and a lot hangs in the balance, obviously it's important to be trying to consider something from at least as many angles as we can.
Well,
Um,
yeah, one of, the thing that you and I immediately saw in the entire submission with the descriptions about the addict is, well, why in the world would an addict, behave in this way in the first place?
mm,
Right, because we could relate to much of what was described about him from our own pasts and from working with guys for a couple of decades. But there's a lot of people out there, especially betrayed partners, who are just literally befuddled, literally just beside themselves, trying to understand why
yeah.
would he do this?
Well, and so what we're going to share for just the next few minutes, because we won't spend a ton of time on this because we want to get to our main section, but what we're going to share here are potential reasons or contributing factors to what may be going on for him. We can't mind read, but we've worked with lots of men in this situation over the years and have been them ourselves. But they are not any of these things that we're going to discuss excuses in any way. Okay, so just to make that
Nope,
clear.
no excuses.
Explanation of potential causes does not in any way diminish accountability. So,
Right.
having said that, let's talk about some of the potential reasons. The first that we ought to consider, and this one is probably the least likely on the list, at least as contributing goes, simply because of the extended amount of time this has been going on. But there is always the potential that an addict is operating, at least to some degree, from a place of naivete, meaning just a lack of understanding of the significance of what's going on or the impact that their actions are having. Now, that can stem from all sorts of places, ranging from genuine, legitimate mental illness that is so extensive that it's difficult to grasp in full nature, either from an empathy standpoint or otherwise, the full breadth of what one's actions are having. I have also come across cases in my time. I know Mark has as well, where a guy grew up in an upbringing that frankly was so poor and so absent moral framework surrounding things like fidelity and commitment and connection and exclusivity and things like that, that those are concepts that are just genuinely foreign.
Well, and
Um,
along those lines, you talk about upbringing. I was raised in an environment, and I know a lot of guys have been, where the male examples, the adult male examples they had in their lives, this is how they treated women, right? This is what guys do.
yeah,
So, the strip clubs and the pornography and the jokes and the, one night stands and getting all you can and just the entire, twisted chauvinistic mindset can easily put a guy into a place where there's stuff that he, quote, just doesn't get, because so much of that was modeled to him. Now, again, that's not an excuse because a guy can always choose to start to get it. And he does not have to stay in that mistreat and abuse, and put down and objectify women. He can come out of that. But nonetheless, some guys were raised where that's just normal stuff. That's what guys
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
it's true.
again, not an excuse, but a potential contributing factor. By the way, it's chances are, guys, in our experience, anyone who's listening to this, and especially if you're tuning in for the first time, these several reasons we're going to go through fairly rapidly. Rarely, if ever, have we seen a case where it's one of these and none of the others, or all of something and not. Usually, the recipe for addiction to develop to this level is much like a good stew is very complex, and there are a lot of different levels to it.
A lot of, especially, yeah, she describes this going on for 20 years.
Yeah, so there's a lot that happens in the course of that, but so just keep that in mind. Obviously, next on on the list might be a level, and we can almost virtually guarantee this is going on to some degree, some sort of level of denial, right? Whether it's about the impact it's having on him, on her, on both, um, not wanting to look, taking active steps to avoid, those things. Gosh, it's almost like we addicts like to escape, right? By saying that.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Just if I put my, as the saying goes, I think that this is true. I think I saw this on a nature channel once. Of many of you may have heard this before. A flamingo's main line of defense, if it sees a predator charging for it and it can't get away, is to simply just stick its head in the ground. And apparently that is a sufficient defense mechanism. If I don't see it, it's not there,
Right.
which works about as well in a marriage as it does for the flamingo. Um, Obviously not a healthy stance, but one that can contribute for sure. So,
Yeah. And the other one we have listed here is fear. And that's a very multifaceted reason. It's not singular. There could be, fear of losing the relationship because even with all the abuse and all the neglect and everything he's, done and not doing, he might be comfortable in the relationship. He might just be kind of settled in and he doesn't want to rock the boat in that way. Another huge fear, and I can speak to this personally, there's a part of him that does not want to give up this addiction.
sure.
Right? He spent 20 years in this relationship in it and probably long before he ever met her. And our addict brains develop a giant protection mechanism with a drawbridge and a moat and a big giant castle wall that says, you don't get to touch this. This is my go-to. This is how I cope with life. This is how I go get pleasure, right? This is my circus. This is my safety. And you're not touching this. So we're leaving it just like it is, right? Because he says, I like myself just the way I am. How likely is that actually? Right. So there's
Yeah.
all these fears around change, giving up the addiction, losing the relationship, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And well, and kind of tied in with that is, like Mark said, wanting to choose it. There's kind of the underbelly of the addiction itself, which would be the dependency on it. It's no
Yes.
secret that we addicts, obviously, over time, we, whether it be sex or some other drug, some other form, seek to numb, medicate, compensate for, diminish, run away from, uh, stamp out whatever you want, other underlying needs, concerns, stresses, etc. With our acting out. That's why we engage in it. And oftentimes when we start to peel back the layers, a big part of this for a guy is it's not. for most of the guys, I would say, and I would throw myself in this case, Mark probably would as well. Like deep down, I knew what I was doing was off base, but I also, along with fear and other things, didn't really see how anything else was possible. Right? I'm in this to some, whatever level dysfunctional pattern, and yeah, it is not optimal. It's not ideal, but I don't really have a better alternative that I seem to be able to pursue.
Well, and the
And so
other,
we continue on.
you had a thing on this list, Steve, pain aversion.
Yeah, it's too hard.
It's too
Hurts too
hard.
much.
All the work I'm going to have to do to break out of this. Are you crazy? This has been going on my whole life.
Yeah.
And I can just see what this is going to take now. Or maybe I've tried a bunch of times and I've never succeeded. So I'm going to take on all this pain and all this work and all this stuff. No.
Well, and I'll list the next one because and this is going to sound really weird unless you're an addict. So we hope partners, you can probably track with this. So it may sound a little strange, but trust us. A really bizarre twisted sense of pride oftentimes can be this as well. So, for example, I'll try to give you
Well,
some insight into
and
the.
didn't she say in her submission, he says he has too much pride to change in the relationship?
It wasn't too much. It was something along those lines. I didn't use those exact words, but something along those lines. But I think that, but like for me, I mean, I can tell you how bizarre this looked like for Steve. Going back to what I said before, I knew I needed to change, but it was sort of like how my 9-month-old daughter right now does things. Like if I, like right now, we're trying to help, feed her still, but she's gotten into this new thing the last couple of weeks where she doesn't want to be fed. She wants to feed herself.
Mm.
So you'll try to hold the spoon out for her, and she's like, no. She demands that she hold the spoon, put it in her mouth, and get half of it all over herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to admit it, but like in a way, I was kind of like that. Like, yeah, okay, fine. Like I never would say this, but in my mind, Mark, I don't know if you reference with this. Yeah, you know what? I need to change. But the fact that you're asking me to ruins it.
Well,
I need to be the one that says I'm going to change, and it needs to happen when I say it does. Otherwise, like I don't get credit for it, or it's not as good. Or
and it wasn't my choice. You pushed me.
sure,
She says right here, he believes he's too proud to fight for the marriage
there you go. Yeah,
and
yeah.
continues to test how far he can push me until I give in.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
He's not going to give in. I'm going to give in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and to that end, it could also be from a very twisted place. And again, we addicts can reference from this. It's very twisted thinking, but how much does she really love me? If she really loves me, she'll stick around even if I'm involved in this nonsense.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Everyone else has abandoned me.
Yeah.
That is the total victim corner of the drama triangle, which if you'd like more about that, daretoconnectnow.com, 2-week free trial. We can talk all about it. We'd love to share more. But yeah, that's definitely an element and a piece potentially.
And this last one, we have shame.
Our good old standby, right?
This would have been one of mine.
Yes.
I don't deserve her anyway. This relationship's shot to crap. It's going to fail anyhow. It's just a matter of time. So I'm just going to hurry it on its way because nobody like me deserves to have anything good. So let's just get on with this. Yeah, it's this defeatist, pessimistic, gloom and doom sort of thing. Yeah.
So there's kind of the quick intro into some of those reasons. And again, that's its own podcast for another time.
Yes.
But the question then becomes, moving this along for sake of time here, why do betrayed partners stay in relationships with porn or sex addicts?
Oh, wow.
Especially those particularly who continue doing these kinds of things, right? Where they're kind of on a seeming crash course into the mountainside and the alarms are going off and he doesn't seem to be pulling up on the stick. Like, what do we, why does this happen? Why do partners stay?
Hey, everybody. PBSE podcast hosts Mark and Steve here with a special message about our revolutionary online recovery program for addict spouses and couples called Dare to Connect. Multiple times every week, we get messages from subscribers in the program. They're people just like you. They're trying to heal from the devastation of sex and porn addiction and betrayal trauma. And here's a few of our most recent submissions. Here's one from an addict in recovery. It says, D2C has principles that everyone should utilize regardless of their circumstances. It doesn't matter your coping mechanisms. It matters that you want to work towards genuine connection with your partner.
That's awesome. Another testimony from an addict continues on. My wife is just starting out in training as a licensed therapist. Dare to Connect has been far more useful to her than her degree.
Wow.
The way Mark and Steve apply what they've learned is always so redemptive. D2C has opened doors for my relationship that I thought would be shut forever. Mark and Steve are an incredible resource of information on the subject of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. We could not do this journey without their help.
Here's one from a partner who's been with us for nearly a year. I want you both to know that it is because of you guys in D2C that I'm able to be in the place that I am today. I will always be grateful to you both for your feedback and prompt replies to my questions. I can't even come close to putting it into words how valuable my time spent with y'all this past year has been to my life. Thank you for everything you taught me about betrayal trauma and boundaries and thinking errors and loving myself and making myself a priority and standing up for myself.
Love that. Love that submission. And then as we close out here today, guys, one more account from another addict in recovery. I wish I had a platform like this 14 years ago where I could have learned and done the hard work of recovery before I had done all this damage to myself and to my spouse. And to be candid with all of you, that's exactly why we created Dare to Connect. Mark and I found ourselves in that place. Messages like these and the others like them, they're what Dare to Connect really is all about, guys, and why Mark and I do what we do. Whether you're an addict or a partner of an addict, and no matter where you find yourself in the recovery process, Dare to Connect can take you to the next level. Don't wait another day to catapult your recovery forward. Today is your day for change. Visit us at daretoconnectnow.com to pick up your free 2-week trial of Dare to Connect today.
Well, I could tell you why mine did for 15 years. Well, after I kept it secret for 15 years, and then she still stuck around when she found out. These partners of ours are lovers. I don't mean, the world likes to say that we were lovers. We had sex. I mean, they love. They're lovers. They nurture. They believe. My wife was just had, and I know yours as well, Stephen, so many betrayed partners we work with, they just have this amazing, beautiful, deep way to love. In spite of all odds, in spite of being mistreated and all these difficulties. And my wife said, I always saw the potential in you. I knew the real you was in there somewhere. And I just kept hanging on to see if he would come forth. Right? They just have this side of them that's just, to me, is remarkable. How much resilience they have and how long they'll stick around because of the things we're talking about. Right? Just astounding. Yeah. They want to be optimistic. They want to believe in him. They want to support him. They want to do all these things.
Well, to be fair, there are lots of other contributing factors as well, right? So, for example, especially when kids are on the line or other, we've interwoven our wives, financial concerns or fears. Oftentimes personal insecurities. Maybe no one else will want me. And sadly, us addicts and our actions and inactions have kind of fueled those insecurities.
Oh, yep.
So a lot of those elements, sometimes it's a distorted sense of commitment.
Yes.
Right? We have worked with many partners over the years where their own code has taught them based on their upbringing and other things, you do not divorce under any circumstance for any reason.
That's what I was taught.
Now, we don't agree with that premise, but we can understand and appreciate where some people come from that.
Well, sometimes things have been so hard for so long. Like you said, their self-esteem is shot. They how am I ever going to get anyone else? And if I do, what if they end up being the same? Let's get in another disastrous relationship.
What if the baggage is worse?
Yeah, what if it's worse? We're in a divorce. We have children involved. Now they're going to end up at his house down the block, unsupervised when he has visitation or half custody. Great,
sure.
You see how complicated this gets, and very understandably, traumatized partners will say, you know what? At least this is known. Now I'm going to go into the unknown with everything else I have to deal with.
Rolling the dice on something new and risking that something might worse might happen, right?
Yeah.
All very serious considerations, and we do have episodes that kind of delve more deeply into that. So having said all that, how does a betrayed partner know when it's time, when it's authentic and self-honoring to call it? And say, look, I got to go. Got to leave.
Yeah. And those words, when is it authentic and self-honoring?
Yeah.
Call it quits.
Yeah, I like how Mark put it that way in the notes. I think that it's very true. Like when do we switch to that place? And we recognize going into this, guys, that as we've said here before on the podcast, oftentimes it's not a question of wanting to leave, it's a question of not being able to stay. And
Yes.
and we really do just I guess kind of apologize on behalf of addiction for the kind of choices that many of you are facing. But having said that, every situation is definitely different, right? And nobody can make that choice for anyone else. Mark and I both ascribe to in our clinics, for example. I mean, people pay us for our time to work with us one on one, and we don't, barring rare exception. For me, for example, one of the few exceptions would be actual physical abuse, where physical safety is a question. Very rarely, if ever, in my practice have I told anyone, "Hey, leave that relationship." I'm not the one living with those consequences.
No.
My children are not the one living with those consequences. I'm not the one that they will be dealing with the outcomes of that long after their time with me has concluded.
Yeah.
And so that has to be a decision. I can inform, I can point out pros and cons as someone's therapist, but at the end of the day, a partner has to, explore their own authenticity and find out when that tipping point is, right?
Now, having said that, there are some things that we do teach and advise and counsel on very much with betrayed partners. And we've talked about this a lot in past PBSC podcasts, so this word's not going to be foreign to those of you who listen to us. But boundaries are critical.
Yeah.
This must all be boundaried. We can't tell you when to go or if to go, but we can tell you how to set up boundaries in the process, right? The careful exploration of a betrayed partner's authentic wants and needs, stating those clearly in writing, attaching consequences and outcomes to those boundaries, right? Which are designed to do what? Not force change or behavior on his part, but to protect your wants and needs, right? To honor you. And then having the consequences or outcomes, both positive and negative. And then regular review and discussion and accountability around those boundaries, open discussion, holding and enforcing boundaries, right? Stevie said, we say if there's physical abuse, you're out. I mean, that is just
Mhm.
instant. But what about ongoing emotional abuse and neglect and all the things that this partner describes? You and I are going to teach and encourage betrayed partners to now have very clear, specific boundaries in place. And if those are blasted through by the addict, then there are outcomes and consequences that get put into place that we could look at as increasing levels of separation, increasing levels of separation.
Yeah, I mean, as I look at this situation, just to kind of talk about some of this from just thinking about this partner standpoint, her story, and if you read the whole thing in detail, which we didn't today for sake of time and confidentiality, which is very vivid and very sad and very tragic. As hard as all of the things have been that have been she has been put through, from my professional perspective, just to give you an idea, and this will lead into my thought here, as bad as the history is, that is not the most concerning part of this whole thing to me. Like if this were my client, it is his current attitude and current trajectory of where he's going.
Yep.
I've seen relationships, and I know Mark has as well, where this history like this and far beyond this have been the case. But when there's a willingness, there's an openness, and there's a willing to be transparent, to do hard things, to get uncomfortable, to entertain new ideas, to practice and develop empathy and humility. When those things are in place, right now in Dare to Connect, we're doing a deep dive into different elements of intimacy. And we'd love to have you join that discussion. Come grab your free trial at daretoconnectnow.com so you can do that. But right now we're focusing on spiritual intimacy. And one of the things that we're talking about is the constant evolutionary nature of spirituality and how that plays a role in intimacy. And it's one of the most beautiful things about intimacy, both with self, but also with another person, is how we grow and evolve together. And in a situation like this, that to me is the ultimate tragedy. Growth for the coupleship, by definition, unless he elects to do something different, has a ceiling.
Yep.
this coupleship cannot progress probably much further past where it is because of the choices that he is electing to make. Now, does that mean that she leaves? Not necessarily, because of all the reasons we talked about before. But I will tell you, from speaking as a guy who pursued a lifetime of inauthenticity and who knows what it's like to be stuck and not be yourself and not be real and has lived inauthentically for far too much of his life, that for me would be a deal breaker. Because if my coupleship can no longer grow or evolve and there's no room for new perspectives or new change or new anything, that to me is incompatible with where I would with what I'd be able or willing to tolerate for myself or my kids or anything else.
Well, because she says she's filing for divorce or getting ready to do so. One of the things, Steve, that you and I talk about a lot with these betrayed partners is before, as you're in the process of making that decision, one of the really important aspects of this that's often overlooked, and it's understandable why it is, because betrayed partners are so overwhelmed. She says, I'm exhausted, right?
Yeah.
Exhausted, crushed. It's hard to look at this other aspect, but it's so important, and it's ongoing self-care, ongoing the building of one's own self-worth, the building of one's own skills, an outside support system so that you can do what? As a betrayed partner, you can build a sovereignty and an independence and a confidence that's not dependent on him, right? I want to choose him and I want him to choose me. But if that's not possible, I will be okay. I don't need him to be happy or to be fulfilled or to have worth. I want us to be a part of that together. But if he chooses not to, I've been doing this self-care work, being an independent, sovereign, confident person of amazing worth, so that if he chooses to not do his part, right? I know who I am. I know what I stand for. I have hopes and dreams and aspirations, and I'm achieving and evolving into these things as a sovereign, independent person. Now the question is, are we compatible in pursuing parallel courses in that relationship?
Yeah.
Isn't that
Which
the real question?
yeah, and that's kind of why I brought up what I did, right? Because again, if you cannot continue to grow and become increasingly more of your authentic self over time, then what are we doing other than counting time, right?
Yeah.
This growth piece is fundamental to the human condition. To be able to become more than I am today, for my relationship to be able to do the same. And things become very difficult when you're in a partnership with somebody. Again, the past is obviously concerning, but so much more so is this because well now unless something changes on his end or unless he's willing to pursue something different, a relationship in a not in a spiritual sense, but in a literal sense is damned. I mean, where do you go?
Yeah, he's frozen. He's already said, I'm happy with who I am. You just need to get over this.
Staying in this relationship means
Because
becoming okay or reconciling with this pattern going on in perpetuity.
yeah, to just be stuck.
So
Dammed like a big dam holding back the water.
So we would just throw that out there for this partner and for anyone else listening. We know that that presents a variety of difficult choices. And again, we're not here to say what, but you deserve to have your voice expressed. And we would reference you to a couple of podcasts we've done in the last few months, episodes prior to this one, numbered wise, where we talk about finding your voice.
Yes.
If you are whatever you choose to do, it is imperative that a part of your authenticity is that you maintain your voice. Um, Whatever you end up doing in this relationship, don't give him a pass by being silent about it.
Mhm.
There needs to be at least an actual vote. He cannot make true, accurate choices about what he is, where he is going, and his role in the relationship unless he knows the full implications of that. And so, in a healthy, loving, but firm way, making it very clear, hey, your actions and inactions in these areas are having these effects. And I'm telling you that not to guilt trip you. I'm telling you that because I'm your partner. You're my partner, and until something in there changes, you need to be informed about where this is trending.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
anyway,
Yeah.
um, if you like what you hear today, as always, you will love Dare to Connect. Some of you we know are already in the program. Some of you are not or have not taken the plunge. May we lovingly but imploringly invite you to come and check it out. You can find out more information about getting a 2-week free trial to the Dare to Connect program and the over 30 hours of content it offers each month with groups Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and support groups on the weekend. Wherever you are at in your recovery with yourself and with your partnership, Dare to Connect can enhance it. I'd love to have you come try it out with us and come join us in a live interactive fashion. Get answers to your questions today at daretoconnectnow.com and click on the button for the 2-week free trial so you can sign up and give that a try at no obligation to you. And for those who are wanting to continue to explore the podcast or send us questions to have those answered in a somewhat time delayed fashion in order that they're received and in a limited 30-minute capacity each week, you can send those in by going to the same website, daretoconnectnow.com, clicking on the PBSC logo up at the top, and there's a contact form at the bottom of that page where you can send those to us.
Yeah. All right. Hey, thanks for being with us here today. We love and appreciate all of you, and as Steve said, hope to see you in D2C, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Be safe, guys.
Everything expressed on the PBSC podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.